Okay, so you got rid of success and you made it outcomes. But at the end of the day, it's still success. Nobody would say they want their customer to be anything other than successful. I think customer success is it's like Six Sigma. In any role, almost, you can employ certain Six Sigma ideas and philosophies and processes. It can apply in a million different ways in the same way I think customer success can. And the things that have been bucketed in our domain for a really long time. It's why I don't think customer success will exist in 10 years, because it's more of like a philosophy than it is any one person's job. You don't hire somebody and call them a Six Sigma person. What's up, lifers, and welcome to the Daily Standup with Lifetime Value, where we're giving you fresh new customer success ideas every single day. I got my man JP with us. JP, do you want to say hi?
It's pure, baby. It's pure.
And we've got Rob with us. Rob, do you want to say hi?
What's up, pure CS people?
And I am your host. My name is Dylan Young. That's right. It's just the three of us. And we've got another noodler for you. JP, do you want to tell us what you're noodling on?
Ooh, we got some fat noodles going today, baby. Oh, you better get ready for a whole lot of fettuccine this episode, baby.
Oh,
with some Yankee. Okay, with some Yankee over there. I'm basically wondering, we talk about customer success. And I was wondering, is it pure where you are? We talk about it. We say that customer success should be this. CS folks should be doing X. But then when they actually in practice, due to typically leadership / ownership / investor pressure, right? I'm basically just going up there. Yeah. I guess I'll use hybridization instead of bastardization. But it seems like we end up taking on some things
scope creep
that sort of morph us from basically being pure CS. Maybe we can quickly go around and say what we think pure CS is. I'm going to say pure CS to me is basically like, I guess to just drop the bomb, like this, you don't really own revenue in the same way that a lot of people are. Like you probably wouldn't own a quota. You would just really be responsible for some retention metrics, but you're not really doing a lot of sales activities. You may not be doing a lot of like support activities. You would be purely focused on really value realization, driving the relationship with the customer and keeping them around. So that I think what we would also want to see as a goal is that you have very satisfied customers who will word of mouth other people to your business, which really helps to lower the customer acquisition costs in the long run. I don't know what you guys think about your definitions of what pure CS is.
Rob, you go first.
Yeah, this is interesting. And I think it speaks to one of the biggest misalignments in our whole industry, one of the most fundamental ones. Because if you think pure customer success, it means we do anything and everything to make our customers successful. However, in practice, what most companies do, most C-level teams are like pure CS is preventing churn. And those are not the same thing. Mm-mm. Pure CS, like imagine a situation where you're owning two accounts. One customer is about to churn, the other customer hasn't been activated. Pure CS says, well, actually most CS organizations say, focus on the customer that's going to churn, right? Focus entirely there, even if they're like not the best fit. Even if they're not being most successful, even if they'd be better with another platform. Pure CS, in its purely philosophical form, says, help your customer find the actual best solution for them on the market, whether or not it's you. Which I think sounds crazy in most customer success work. But I have a client, actually, it's really interesting. So they make an advertising platform for mental health, drug and alcohol rehabilitation centers. And their clients, these substance use centers, they'll advertise on multiple channels. They'll advertise on, like, let's say Google and their platform. Pure CS would say, like, look, if they're having better results on Google, just push them to Google. Churn that account because it's better for the account in the long run. But doesn't that sound crazy for most of us in customer success to deliberately churn this account?
That does sound.
No, not. But look again.
Let's hear it.
I don't think it does.
Okay.
I think customer success, the view I take on it is very long term, and it's positioning your company best with the most customers as possible. Now, I think that as I say it out loud, it sounds sort of backwards, but what I mean by that is that's not your ICP then. You shouldn't be trying to put a square ICP peg into a round hole that is your solutions that you offer. That is only kicking the can down the road, and it actually makes your CSM less efficient, less capable of having the widest coverage for the customers that actually fit your ICP. So on its face, yes, I disagree that you don't just say, okay, bye. But if you somehow could control the experiment to understand what that customer costs you in time and effort from a CSM and from an organization, is it really the best use? What's the cost of maintaining that revenue? It's probably not as good as if the not yet activated customer is your perfect ICP and is ready to hit the ground running and wants to utilize 90+% of your system. Then the answer is clear, right? And so, my definition of pure CS is it's actually not even any of that. The definition is NRR, but in the most efficient way possible. Like, how high can your NRR be with 10 CSMs? Okay, well, what if you wanted to reduce that to 5 CSMs with the same portfolio of customers? How high could your NRR be? That's really what we're getting at, is how efficient can our book of business, our existing customer base, be in terms of the revenue they deliver to us with the least amount of expenses on our end? I think that's the way to look at it. I think the problem we have is that customer success, the definition, like, we've named the position in such a way that it kind of pigeonholes us. Now we've said, okay, well, it's about making the customer successful, when in actuality, that is in many cases not what customer success is meant to do. And so it's a hard conversation to have in that regard. And I think, to your point, JP, my definition was NRR, but that is obviously inherently revenue related. But I think if you look at the RACI chart, I think CS is often accountable, but not necessarily responsible. You think about a CSQL, about surfacing opportunities and then throwing that shit over the fence and saying, hey, you figure it out. I had the conversation. I teed them up. Now you got to close that deal. You got to push them through the funnel. Sales, account management, whatever you want to call them. I think that's a revenue activity, but it's not, I'm not sending them the contract. So what does that mean? I don't know. That's why I think the conversation is so hard to have, and I was excited to have this.
Let me throw in. Let me pivot it a little bit, because what we were getting at, I think, was very much, it did have some grounding in what we do, but we were very theoretical, right? Because that's what it was. Pure CS is inherently, it's like the opposite end of the spectrum. Now let's talk about what we think people are doing in reality, right? So pure CS is like 100%. It's like this ideal.
Yeah.
But can you think of places that you think of that are doing this really well, that you've seen? Maybe Rob has more insight because you do the consulting. But I'm wondering about places where there's been a feeling like what people are doing feels like what they got hired for. That can be a tricky conversation too, I know, because roles can evolve. But we're just thinking about, you're in customer success, you've been in multiple roles, you get hired for a new role. How much sort of consistency is there, everything else held the same?
What's super interesting too is, Dylan, what I liked about your definition, or was intrigued by with your definition, is you mentioned efficiency. So you mentioned doing like the same work with a 5-person team instead of a 10-person team. But that efficiency actually is, JP, I think that's where we get this role scope creep. And a lot of executive teams are taking bets on saying, like, maybe we can stretch this person to move from what we called pure CS to doing like some billing and invoicing work. Right. Like maybe they could just do the customer billing and invoicing. And
except that's not efficient. because that is not a part of the flywheel of CS activities.
True.
So,
But is that what people do? I think that's what Rob's saying. But is that what they do? You're right, Dylan. I know what you're saying. But do they say, yeah, go do some billing
I
and
think that's
invoicing?
why we're having the conversation, is because we fucking know they do.
Yeah.
But they shouldn't.
Why is efficiency key to this, though, Dylan? That's a good question, right? Why not just throw more and more resources in the most inefficient way possible? Maybe not the most inefficient way possible.
So
I'm not thinking
I think
about margins when I think
it's
about
really-
customer success.
You
Or
said
maybe I
you're
should
not
be.
thinking about margins.
Well, let me rephrase that.
It's in your
Most-
fucking LinkedIn headline, brother. You're thinking about
No.
margins.
No, but pure customer success. In pure customer success, I'll spend an extra $5,000-$10,000 to make a customer successful. But in the way it's actually operationalized, it's like, no, we should cut that back.
Yeah, I don't understand the statement, because if someone were to say to you, I've got a customer that's worth, 12 grand ARR, 1,000 MRR, and I've got a CSM that makes 100 grand and like they spend 5,000 a year of their time, right? So what is that? 5% of their time, something like that, on this customer. If all of a sudden you say they have to spend 10% of their time on that customer's profitability has just gone from $7,000 to $2,000, right? And we're assuming there's no other overhead costs, right? Let's keep the math really simple. I don't know if I make that decision.
And
what about a different one, real quick? We talked about this in a previous episode. We were talking about how much training sales gets. And you, Dylan, said that you tried to go get a training that was like relatively cheap for a CSM that would have probably made them more efficient. But what was the answer?
No. Go kick rocks. Well, it was use the resources you have at your disposal, your expertise, Dylan, and that of our VP of sales. But what that misses is the amount of time and effort it's going to demand from me or from the VP of sales, when we could have sent her to a $1,500 course and gotten her all the basics. She would have had to come back with a certification, which in many ways, look, from a management perspective, part of the goal was, hey, there can't be any excuses if she says she doesn't know how to do something. And we've taken her through a certified program that taught her how to do it. That allows us, look, I don't love this nefarious activity, but that allows us to put the responsibility back on her and say, look, we've given you the tools and the resources to be as successful as possible within this role. You can't say that we didn't give you that.
We got a spicy meatball, y'all. We may have to have a part 2 of this one. So I think it is the topic. It is the topic right now. This is the topic, right? Like what we're talking about was not simple. That is not simple. This is why we're still hearing people like, should CSMs have a quota? Should they own revenue? It's not because people out there, I think, are evil. I did make a statement. I mentioned if you are more concerned with pleasing your investors than pleasing your customers, that you couldn't really implement customer success. That was like my hot take. But I think in an ideal world, you can, everyone can be satisfied. It's just a matter of priority, I think.
I don't think that's true, though. I think at the end of the day, it is so dependent upon the organization, on the product. It's also dependent upon the skill set of the people that you have in seat. And we often forget how many variables there are. And we often, I've seen this personally, try to apply the same idea of sales to customer success. And we give them quarterly goals and we give them yearly goals, when there's so much of it is dependent upon then the landscape of your existing customer base. And so those same goals can't apply because we have this very boxed in number of prospects that we can work with. We've got a ton of variables within those. You've got to look at the industry. Is the industry even in a place where these opportunities make sense? That's why I believe you've got to build customer success essentially from the ground up for every organization There's a ton of schools and frameworks. Rob, there you go, bingo. You can employ those often, just about every single time you can employ some piece of it. But you've also got to have an eye towards how your company is different and how its target customer base, its TAM, is different. And we don't do that. Investors come in and they say, put CS in place, measure them on NPS and a quarterly revenue goal. And if you don't, then we're never giving you any more money for any other funding rounds. Sort of shit. Like it's just
okay.
It's just that is so often how it occurs, and it is not thought of cerebrally enough. Sorry, it's my thought process.
We love to say like it all depends, right? But like I agree with what you say about the ground up. I do think that a lot of this, you can't just come in and be like, well, I did customer success over here. However, I think what we're arriving at is some sort of weird pressure that happens where if people don't get customer success like from the top, I feel like whatever way you're going to do it is probably not going to come out quite like the leaders themselves want it to look like, because they can't get the buy-in for things.
Well, and if they think customer success is a cost center and it's not generating revenue, well, then you're not going to sink money into. I think that's at the core of why customer success doesn't get a lot of the same support as sales, because we're stuck in this transitional period. I fundamentally disagree that customer success should not touch revenue. And the reason is because, first of all, I think we are well positioned to do it if it's done properly. But the second piece is because we're never going to have a seat at the table, so to speak, or get the investment dollars we want unless we can show that. We're still too much of a redheaded stepchild.
Mm-hmm. What we're looking at is the growing pains of a young discipline, basically.
I think so.
Customer success is, how long has it been around? Like 20? I mean, it might have existed in some form before it was called customer success, but we're saying about 20 plus years, perhaps?
Something like that. 30 at this
maybe
point.
30. Okay. Well, still, it's still that's very new, right? All these other forms have been around, sales, marketing. So what is it, this whole thing with the market? Was it a market sensitivity thing? In other words, CS really changed when the money was no longer cheap? We said we thought the layoffs were over, but we're still hearing about, right, people getting these like mass layoffs. So were those mass layoffs? I mean, I think that it was more than customer success folks.
I think layoffs now are occurring. And Rob, you're getting iced out here, buddy, but feel free to jump in.
I'm just listening.
Well, jump in.
I think layoffs are occurring now. I think we're at the tail of layoff periods, but I think layoffs now are occurring if you just have a shitty product. Like, I think the impact of a depressed market, quote unquote, whatever that means, even though we're at like all-time highs for stock indexes, that started a snowball effect. And the first thing it did was everybody had to rethink how they're spending their money. So a lot of what were considered ancillary services, people started cutting. So like product marketing went, and customer marketing were some of the first ones to go, because they're like really nice to haves and they do have an added benefit, but you can also survive without them, right? Like when I lost my job, I got rid of my cleaning service because I can still live without my cleaning service.
Right.
It's a nice to have, and so I think now what you're seeing is, okay, well, everybody had to deal with having less money, less productivity. And so now the first thing they did was fire people. And now the next thing you're going to see is they're getting rid of systems.
I would say they're perceived as nice to haves for our listeners who are in those domains, by the way.
Yeah. No. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Clean it up, Rob. Okay.
You know what's interesting too, Dylan? I think you're right. Bad products that lack product market fit is how I would say it. Like, I've seen the opposite, where actually really good products can justify downsizing the team, because if a company invests heavily in a really strong product-led onboarding motion, product-led growth motion, then they don't need people, actually. to support that motion that they don't need as many people. Obviously, they have people behind the scenes who do that work, but they look more like product managers than they do customer success managers.
Whoa. But I think then you start to get into this philosophical debate about where do like a product manager who their work is in effort of a PLG motion, strengthening PLG. I would say they are at least part customer success manager, because their goal is to make onboarding really easy, to make retention that much easier. And those are things that customer success is meant to do. But typically in complex enterprise, quote unquote, sort of softwares. And so that's why I think the term customer success, the title is sort of like wonky nowadays. I think it speaks more to someone in a certain type of company with a certain type of product than it does actual outcomes.
Question for you. If you could rephrase the whole industry as customer outcomes, would you do that?
No.
He's quick. He's like,
no. No, because
that to me is probably pure customer success, right?
No, because I think you're just okay. So you got rid of success and you made it outcomes. So, but at the end of the day, it's still success. Nobody would say they want their customer to be anything other than successful. What I think it actually is we've talked about this. I think customer success it's like Six Sigma, right? Like you don't hire somebody and call them a Six Sigma person. Right? In any role, almost, you can employ certain Six Sigma ideas and philosophies and processes. But it can apply in a million different ways, in the same way I think customer success can. And the things that have been bucketed in our domain for a really long time. It's why I don't think customer success will exist in 10 years. Because it's more of like a philosophy than it is any one person's job, which we talk about, but
there's a lot to nosh on, as you would say. With this,
but that is our time.
Yeah,
in this our first extended episode of the Daily Standup. You guys got any last words? Rob, come on, man, you're the thought leader here. Why don't you?
I will
put
just
a period
say,
on it.
I tried so hard to not interrupt, and then I get criticized for being too quiet. Oh my God. You guys can't win with you.
You know what? You can have your flowers.
No, I want actually, Dylan, I just want to hear your last final thought. Let's imagine that what you said transpires. Customer success doesn't exist. What takes its place?
I mean, we've talked about this. I think so. Again, like I have trouble even answering this question because you ask the question in terms of customer success, and it's like, okay, well, what takes its place? I just think that the responsibilities, and the motions that most often customer success is responsible for are going to be divvied up and given to other positions or job titles, and I think primarily it's going to be account management. And what I mean by that is people who manage accounts. It's not account acquisition. So that's sales or it's whatever the hell else. I don't care. But it's people who manage accounts and who are responsible for generating additional revenue from them. But I think it's also marketing. And I think it's also product. And I think it's also engineering when you talk about creating like data feeds that allow you to see the behavior of a customer set. And then I do believe that there's still a place for somebody, like in a lot of larger organizations, there is a Six Sigma SME, a guy whose job it is to make sure that when you're creating projects, you're running projects, whatever, you're using Six Sigma best practices, because it is just the industry standard for making sure projects are done correctly, successfully, and iterated upon. And for the future, that's a big thing for Six Sigma, is the ability to continue to monitor. And so I do believe that customer success will turn into an SME sort of role, like a program manager whose job is to liaise with sales and marketing and product to make sure that they are doing the best practice version of these customer success motions.
Man, that's interesting.
And I know we've had that conversation before, but I like you on your soapbox here.
Yeah.
The audience needs to hear it.
I think the audience does need to hear you more.
It's been a while since we've heard the Dylan forecast.
But yeah, you're so used to hosting the stuff. It's like you don't get your.
There's a lot. There's a lot.
Whatever.
To get out there.
Appreciate you. Appreciate you. This is going to take a lot of editing. That is our time, folks.
All right.
Can't wait to talk about this next time. But for now, boys, we got to say goodbye.
Peace.
You've been listening to the Daily Standup by Lifetime Value. Please note that the views expressed in these conversations are attributed only to those individuals on this recording and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of their respective employers. For all inquiries, please reach out via email to dylan@lifetimevaluemedia.com. Find us on YouTube @Lifetime Value and find us on the socials @Lifetime Value Media. Until next time.